$219 million is the verified amount of financial wealth that was stolen from American households last year through sophisticated bullion fraud. This figure does not come from a speculative blog post or rumor mill, but directly from the official annual report released by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The victims of these crimes were not reckless gamblers betting on volatile penny stocks or trying to get rich quick with unproven cryptocurrency tokens. They were responsible citizens and careful savers who were attempting to protect their purchasing power by converting currency into a tangible store of value. They purchased what they believed to be investment-grade physical gold bars to secure their retirement against the ongoing devaluation of the dollar. But instead of acquiring a safe haven asset, they unknowingly exchanged their life savings for gold-plated tungsten counterfeits that have zero monetary value. If you're concerned about the authenticity of the precious metals sitting in your safe right now, you need to subscribe to this channel immediately. I'm going to deconstruct the exact mechanics of the most advanced metallurgical counterfeiting operation that has ever targeted the retail gold market. Hit the notification bell so you receive the critical data required to audit your own holdings before it is too late to recover your funds. Please leave a comment below stating where you are watching from and whether you verify your metals with a machine or trust the dealer implicitly. I want to gauge how many Americans are actually testing their wealth versus how many are operating on blind faith in a vulnerable supply chain. The spot price of gold has recently shattered historical records and surged past the psychological barrier of $4,400 per ounce. When a financial asset appreciates with such velocity, it inevitably attracts a dangerous combination of desperate buyers and sophisticated criminal enterprises. We are currently observing a convergence of high demand and predatory supply that is resulting in a massive transfer of wealth away from the middle class. The Internet Crime Complaint Center has issued an urgent warning regarding the exponential rise in gold investment scams targeting U.S. citizens. The financial losses have skyrocketed year over year as the rising price of the metal creates a lucrative incentive for industrial-scale forgery. For thousands of years, gold has been the standard of wealth specifically because it is chemically unique and difficult to replicate with cheaper materials. The ancient Greeks discovered methods to test density to ensure that their treasury was not being diluted by dishonest smelters and thieves. However, the modern adversary is not a simple thief, but a highly organized operation armed with advanced manufacturing capabilities and deep capital resources. They have successfully weaponized a specific industrial metal that mimics the physical properties of gold so closely that it defeats standard testing. That metal is tungsten, and it is currently the primary component inside thousands of counterfeit bars circulating in the secondary market today. Tungsten possesses a density of 19.25 grams per cubic centimeter, which is statistically identical to gold's 19.30 grams. To the unassisted human hand, the weight feels perfectly correct, and the characteristic density that signals real gold is present in the fake. To a standard digital jeweler's scale, the weight is accurate, and if the dimensions are precise, the simple displacement test will indicate it is gold. This presents a catastrophic risk for the global bullion trade because trust is the absolute foundation of liquidity in the precious metals market. If a buyer cannot trust that a 1-ounce bar stamped with a reputable refinery mark is genuine, the entire market grinds to a halt. We are witnessing this friction right now as independent dealers are becoming increasingly hesitant to purchase inventory from the general public. Imagine the devastation of walking into a coin shop to liquidate your savings and being informed that your assets are counterfeit industrial slugs. This scenario is playing out daily across the country, and the financial impact on families is often irreversible and total. The perpetrators are leveraging the fear of missing out to pressure anxious investors into hasty transactions without proper due diligence. They are constructing professional-grade websites that mirror legitimate bullion dealers, complete with live spot price feeds and secure checkout portals. They list inventory at a slight discount to the market price, which acts as a powerful psychological hook for bargain hunters in a bull market. When gold is trading at record highs, a 5% discount represents a significant saving that clouds the judgment of the buyer. That desire to save money combined with the urgency of a rising market is the vulnerability that scammers are ruthlessly exploiting today. But the tungsten epidemic is not confined to digital transactions. It is permeating the physical supply chain through peer-to-peer sales. High-quality fakes are entering the market through estate sales and private listings where the seller may not even know the item is fake. A collection is sold to a local pawn shop by an heir who has no knowledge of the provenance or authenticity of the metal. The shop owner performs a basic scratch test which only verifies the outer layer and purchases the metal as genuine inventory. He then unknowingly sells those counterfeit bars to a local investor who places them in a home safe for long-term storage. The investor sits on that wealth for a decade, only to discover the fraud when they attempt to sell during a financial emergency. This latency period makes this type of fraud a financial time bomb that may not detonate until years after the crime occurred. The $219 million loss reported by the FBI is likely a conservative estimate of the actual damage. Many victims never report the crime due to embarrassment or simply because they are still unaware that their holding is comprised of tungsten. The true scope of the fraud could easily reach into the billions when accounting for the counterfeit inventory currently dormant in private safes. We must examine the salted bar manufacturing technique, which represents the current state of the art in bullion counterfeiting. Criminal machinists take a legitimate gold bar and use precision drilling equipment to hollow out the interior of the metal. They insert tungsten rods or custom-machined tungsten slug into the cavity to replace the mass of the removed gold. They then refill the entry points with molten gold and polish the surface to restore the bar to its original visual condition. The bar is then re-stamped with the logo and serial number of a major Swiss or American refinery to complete the deception. Because the exterior of the bar is solid 24-karat gold, it will pass the standard acid test and scratch test every time. Even the handheld X-ray fluorescence guns used by many pawn shops can be deceived by this method due to their depth limitations. The XRF technology typically analyzes only the top few microns of the surface material to determine the chemical composition. If the gold cladding is sufficiently thick, the device will read the item as pure gold and validate the transaction for the dealer. This creates a false sense of security for the buyer who believes they have seen the metal scientifically verified with their own eyes. This level of manufacturing requires access to industrial tooling and a sophisticated understanding of metallurgy that exceeds common street fraud. We are facing an organized effort that likely involves international supply chains and manufacturing hubs specializing in tungsten products. There is substantial evidence suggesting that these counterfeits are being imported into the United States, disguised as industrial components. Once inside the domestic market, they are filtered into the retail supply chain through networks of intermediaries and unknowing private sellers. The profit margins on a single kilogram bar of salted gold are staggering at the current market valuation of the metal. A legitimate kilogram of gold is valued at over $140,000 in the current market environment. The cost of the tungsten insert is negligible, and the labor required to machine the bar is minimal for a professional operation. Selling a single fake bar yields a nearly 100% profit margin that rivals the most lucrative illegal trades in the world. With such immense financial rewards, it is a certainty that criminal organizations will continue to flood the market with these products. The risk profile for the criminal is relatively low compared to the reward, especially given the difficulty of cross-border prosecution. By the time the fraud is detected, the seller has often vanished and the digital trail has been obfuscated or deleted entirely. Funds are typically laundered through cryptocurrency networks or moved to jurisdictions that do not cooperate with U.S. law enforcement. This reality makes the verification phase of the purchasing process the single most critical step in protecting your financial future. You can no longer rely solely on the reputation of a platform or the appearance of a product to guarantee its authenticity. The surging popularity of gold bars sold by major retailers like Costco has inadvertently created new opportunities for scammers in the secondary market. While the primary retailers are selling 100% legitimate product, the resale market for these specific bars is becoming contaminated. Online marketplaces are seeing a flood of listings for unopened retailer exclusive bars in their original Assay packaging. Sophisticated fraudsters are purchasing the real items to obtain the valid packaging and serial numbers for their operation. They carefully open the tamper-evident packaging and swap the legitimate bar for a tungsten replica of the same weight. They then reseal the assay card using heat and adhesive to make it appear as if it has never been touched or opened. The buyer receives the package and assumes the contents are genuine because the assay card appears to be factory sealed. They are hesitant to open the package to test the bar because doing so might reduce the perceived resale value of the item. This hesitation is exactly what the counterfeiter relies on to ensure that the physical metal is never subjected to testing. We are also seeing high-quality counterfeit assay cards that are printed to replicate the exact specifications of major refineries. The holographic security features are duplicated, and the serial numbers are cloned from valid batches of legitimate gold bars. This cloning of serial numbers suggests a potential data leak or sophisticated data scraping operation targeting refinery databases. Federal investigators are actively working to determine how criminals are obtaining valid serial numbers to match their counterfeit products. The $219 million figure also encompasses the growing prevalence of paper gold investment fraud. This involves victims being cold called and persuaded to transfer their retirement funds into a fraudulent precious metals IRA. The perpetrator accepts the funds and provides the victim with fabricated statements showing gold holdings in a non-existent depository. This form of fraud is just as devastating as the physical tungsten scam, as the victim is left with absolutely no assets. In both scenarios, the investor believes they have moved their wealth to safety when they have actually moved it into a total loss. The targeting of these scams is highly specific and focuses on demographics that are concerned about economic stability. Predators use the genuine economic data regarding inflation and debt to validate the victim's fears before offering a fraudulent solution. They reinforce the narrative that the banking system is unsafe and that physical gold is the only secure alternative. While the premise regarding economic instability may be grounded in fact, the vehicle they are selling is a complete fabrication. This tragedy is compounded by the fact that the victims are often the most financially responsible segment of the population. They are attempting to preserve their family legacy and are being punished for their prudence by sophisticated criminal actors. The sophistication of the tungsten epidemic challenges the fundamental assumption that physical possession equals financial security. If the physical asset in your possession cannot be verified as genuine, then it fails to function as a store of value. We must collectively upgrade our verification protocols to address the evolving threats in the precious metals marketplace. Standard acid tests and basic density measurements are no longer adequate defenses against professional tungsten counterfeits. We need to adopt advanced diagnostic technologies that can inspect the interior of the bar without damaging the integrity of the metal. This leaves the average retail investor exposed to significant risk if they do not possess the necessary knowledge and equipment. The prevalence of fake gold is increasing in direct correlation with the spot price and shows no signs of abating. Your financial sovereignty depends entirely on your ability to discriminate between genuine monetary metal and worthless industrial alloy. This brings us to the terrifying reality of why standard testing methods are failing to catch these sophisticated counterfeits in the modern era. For decades, the gold standard of testing was the simple ping test or the ice cube test that you see online. You drop a gold coin on a table and listen for a specific high-pitched ring that lasts for several seconds. Or you place an ice cube on a silver or gold bar and watch it melt instantly due to thermal conductivity. These tests were effective against the crude lead and copper fakes that used to flood the market in the past. But against a precision-engineered tungsten bar, these tests are completely useless and actually dangerous to rely on for verification. Tungsten is a heavy metal that has a density that is almost mathematically identical to pure 24-karat gold. Gold has a density of 19.3 grams per cubic centimeter, while tungsten is 19.25 grams. This difference is so microscopic that it is statistically insignificant to the average digital scale or human hand. If you hold a 1-ounce gold bar in your left hand and a 1-ounce tungsten bar in your right hand, you will not be able to feel the difference because the gravitational pull is virtually indistinguishable to your senses. This physical similarity allows the counterfeiters to create a core of tungsten that mimics the weight perfectly. They wrap this core in a thick layer of real gold that is heavy enough to survive a deep scratch test. This is not the gold plating that you see on cheap jewelry which rubs off after a few months of wear. This is a thick industrial cladding that is designed to defeat the acid tests used by pawn shops and jewelers. When a dealer applies nitric acid to the surface of the bar, it reacts with the gold layer and shows pure. The acid never touches the tungsten core underneath because the gold layer is simply too thick for it to penetrate. This is why we are seeing established coin shops getting burned by these fakes just as often as novice investors. The shop owner trusts his acid test and buys the bar over the counter and then sells it to you the next day. He essentially becomes an unwitting accomplice in a felony fraud chain that ends with your life savings evaporating. But the problem goes deeper than just the physical metal. It extends to the very packaging that gives the bar legitimacy. The Assay card is the plastic credit card size package that holds the gold bar and certifies its authenticity. For years, legitimate refineries like PAMP and Perth Mint told us that if the card is sealed, the gold is real. That advice is now the most dangerous lie in the entire precious metals industry because of what is happening in China. We have reports of cloning factories in Shenzhen that are dedicated to replicating the packaging of major Swiss refineries. They have cracked the code on the security features, including the holographic seals and the UV light watermarks on the card. They are printing assay cards that are indistinguishable from the real thing, even to a trained professional eye. They buy real gold bars to get the valid serial numbers, and then they print thousands of fake cards with that number. This means you could look up the serial number on the refinery website, and it would show up as a valid bar. But there are now 500 fake bars circulating around the world with that exact same valid serial number. This destroys the concept of a unique identifier, which is the foundation of trust in the global supply chain. We are also seeing a massive rise in what the FBI calls the bait-and-switch scam on online marketplaces. The scammer buys a legitimate gold bar from a reputable dealer like Costco or Appimex to get the real packaging. They carefully use heat to melt the glue on the assay card without destroying the plastic shell casing. They remove the real gold bar and replace it with a high-quality tungsten fake that costs $20. They reseal the package using industrial adhesive and sell the unopened bar on eBay or Craigslist for cash. The buyer receives the package and sees that it is still sealed and assumes that the gold inside is pristine. They put it in their safe and they never open it because opening it would destroy the resale premium of the bar. This psychological trick is brilliant because the packaging itself becomes the weapon that prevents verification by the owner. You are afraid to test your own wealth because testing it requires you to damage the product's market value. This is how the counterfeiters have weaponized our own greed and our obsession with mint condition collectibles against us. But the fraud is not limited to physical bars. It has morphed into a complex courier scam targeting seniors. The FBI Boston Division recently issued a warning about a surge in government impersonation scams involving gold bullion. The victim receives a call from someone claiming to be from the Federal Reserve or the FBI Fraud Department. They are told that their bank account has been compromised by hackers and that their cash is at risk of theft. The agent instructs them to withdraw their savings and buy gold bars to protect their assets from the hackers. They are told that gold is the only safe haven and that the government will store it for them securely. Once the victim buys the gold, a courier is sent to their house to pick up the bullion for safekeeping. The courier is often just a gig worker or a mule who has no idea they are part of a federal crime. They take the gold and hand it off to the criminal ring, and the victim never sees their life savings again. This scam has drained over $55 million from elderly Americans in just the last few months alone. It relies on the legitimate fear of a banking collapse to manipulate people into handing over physical assets voluntarily. The tragedy is that these victims correctly identified the risk of the banking system, but fell for a different trap. They moved their money out of a digital bank and into a physical asset only to hand it to a thief. This highlights the critical importance of chain of custody, which is a concept most retail investors ignore completely. When you buy gold, you are becoming your own central bank, and that comes with massive personal responsibility. You do not have a fraud department or an FDIC insurance policy to bail you out if you make a mistake. If you buy a fake bar or hand your gold to a scammer, the money is gone forever with no recourse. Most homeowner insurance policies do not cover bad investment decisions or voluntary handover of assets to fraudsters. They only cover theft, where there was a break-in or a robbery, which is not what is happening here. You are voluntarily buying a fake product, which makes it a civil matter rather than a clear-cut insurance claim. This leaves the victim completely exposed to the total loss of their capital with zero safety net to catch them. We also need to address the numismatic fakes, which are counterfeit rare coins rather than simple bullion bars. Counterfeiters are targeting rare dates of gold eagles and Morgan dollars because the premiums are much higher. A standard ounce of gold is worth $4,400, but a rare coin can be worth $50,000. They are taking common date coins and altering the dates using laser engraving tools to mimic rare years. Or they are creating entirely fake coins from scratch, using transfer dies created from genuine museum pieces. These fakes are so good that they have fooled the major grading services like PCGS and NGC in the past. We have seen slabbed coins in official grading holders that turned out to be counterfeit upon closer inspection. This means even the certified market is not 100% safe from this sophisticated contagion of fraud. The counterfeiters are also using social engineering to sell these fakes on social media platforms like Facebook. They join gold investing groups and build a reputation over months by selling small, legitimate items first. Once they have the trust of the community, they list a large lot of gold bars at a great price. They collect the money from 10 or 20 different buyers and then ship out the tungsten fakes all at once. By the time the packages arrive and the buyers realize they have been scammed, the seller has deleted their account. This exit scam model is becoming increasingly common as the price of gold attracts more casual retail buyers. The anonymity of the internet, combined with the irreversible nature of crypto and wire transfers, is a deadly mix. We are also seeing a rise in gold IRA companies that are pushing overpriced or exclusive coins to seniors. These are not illegal fakes, but they are financial fakes, because the value is artificially inflated by marketing. They sell you a limited edition gold coin for twice the spot price, claiming it has numismatic potential. But when you try to sell it back to the market, you realize it is only worth the melt value of the gold. You immediately lose 50% of your investment the moment you sign the paper because of the massive markup. This is technically legal, but it is morally bankrupt, and it destroys the wealth of the investor just as effectively. The fake gold epidemic is a multi-headed hydra that attacks from every angle of the market simultaneously. It attacks the physical metal with tungsten, and it attacks the paper trail with cloned assay cards. It attacks the psychology of the buyer with fear, and it attacks the wallet with overpriced premiums. To survive this minefield, you need to upgrade your verification toolkit to match the sophistication of the enemy. You can no longer rely on a simple visual inspection or the reputation of the seller alone to verify authenticity. You need to understand the physics of sound velocity and how it differs between gold and tungsten alloys. You need to know how to use an ultrasonic thickness gauge, which is the only non-destructive way to catch a fake. Sound travels through gold at 3,240 meters per second exactly. Sound travels through tungsten at 5,180 meters per second, which is much faster. This physical constant cannot be faked by any amount of plating or drilling or sophisticated manufacturing. It is the kryptonite to the tungsten superfake, and yet very few investors own the tool to measure it. We need to pivot to the specific solutions and the tools you need to buy right now to protect yourself. We will explain how to build a verification lab in your own home for less than a few $100s. We will verify exactly which dealers have the most rigorous testing standards, so you know who to trust. We will also discuss the legal steps you must take if you discover a fake bar in your collection today. There is a way to protect yourself, but it requires you to stop being a passive consumer and start being an expert. You work too hard for your money to let it be stolen by a piece of painted lead from a factory in China. The time for blind trust is over, and the time for extreme verification has officially begun for us all. The only way to win a war against a technologically superior enemy is to upgrade your own weapons and tactics immediately. For the last 40 years, the average gold investor has been fighting a 21st century war with 19th century tools. You have been relying on the ping test or the ice cube test, or simply trusting the reputation of the logo stamped on the bar. But in a world of tungsten superfakes and cloned assay cards, those methods are no longer sufficient to protect your wealth. You need to build a personal verification lab that gives you the same capabilities as a professional bullion dealer. The good news is that you do not need a degree in metallurgy or $1 million budget to do this effectively in your own home. You just need to understand the 3 specific physical properties of gold that cannot be faked by any amount of tungsten. The first property is electrical conductivity, and this is the Achilles heel of the tungsten counterfeit bar. While tungsten mimics the density of gold almost perfectly, it does not mimic the way electricity flows through the metal. Gold is one of the most conductive metals in the known universe, which is why it is used in high-end electronics. Tungsten is significantly less conductive, and this difference is easily detectable with the right piece of equipment. The tool that every serious gold investor must own right now is called the Precious Metal Verifier, or PMV. It is manufactured by a company called Sigma Metallytics, and it has become the gold standard for non-destructive testing. The Sigma machine sends a magnetic field into the bar to measure the specific resistivity of the metal inside. It can see through the plastic assay card and through the gold plating to detect the tungsten core underneath. If you place a real gold bar on the sensor, the reading will fall directly into the center of the brackets on the screen. If you place a tungsten fake on the sensor, the reading will jump outside the brackets, immediately signaling a fail. This machine costs roughly $1,000, which sounds expensive until you realize what it is protecting. If you have $50,000 in gold, buying a $1,000 machine is a 2% insurance premium. That is a small price to pay for the peace of mind of knowing that your retirement savings are actually real. But I understand that not everyone can afford a Sigma machine, especially if you are just starting to stack silver or gold. This brings us to the second tool, which is the poor man's Sigma, and it relies on the speed of sound. The speed of sound traveling through a metal is a physical constant that is determined by the atomic structure of the element. Sound travels through pure gold at exactly 3,240 meters per second. Sound travels through tungsten at 5,180 meters per second, which is drastically faster. You can buy a device called an ultrasonic thickness gauge on Amazon for less than $200. This device uses a small probe and a drop of ultrasonic gel to send a sound wave through the bar and bounce it back. If you set the machine to the velocity of gold and measure a 1-inch thick bar, it should read exactly 1 inch. If the bar has a tungsten core, the sound will travel faster, and the machine will give you a weird reading like 0.6 inches. This creates a cognitive dissonance, where the ruler says the bar is 1 inch, but the sound says it is thinner. That discrepancy is the mathematical proof that you are holding a fake bar without ever drilling into it. The ultrasonic test is incredibly powerful because it is physics-based and cannot be cheated by plating or packaging. However, it does require you to take the bar out of the assay card, which many investors are hesitant to do. This brings us to the sovereign mindset that you must adopt if you want to survive in this market. You have to stop caring about the resale value of the plastic packaging and start caring about the reality of the metal. A real gold bar that has been opened and tested is worth exactly the spot price of gold anywhere in the world. A fake gold bar inside a pristine sealed package is worth absolutely nothing to anyone except a scammer. You must be willing to break the seal to verify your wealth, because the seal is often part of the deception. If you are buying from a secondary source like eBay or a private seller, you must assume the package is compromised. This leads us to the most critical line of defense, which is the chain of custody of your assets. The absolute safest way to buy gold is to buy directly from a primary dealer who sources from the mint. Companies like APMEX or JM Bullion or SD Bullion have direct contracts with the US Mint and Pamp Suisse. When you buy from them, you are the first owner of that specific bar since it left the refinery vault. Costco is also a safe primary source, but only if you buy directly from their website or pick it up in the store yourself. The moment that bar leaves the primary chain of custody, it becomes secondary market, gold, and the risk skyrockets. If you buy a Costco bar on Craigslist, you're not buying from Costco, you're buying from a stranger in a parking lot. You have no idea if that stranger is a legitimate investor or part of a tungsten distribution ring. Unless you bring your Sigma machine or your ultrasonic gauge to that meeting, you're gambling with your money. This is why I strongly advise against buying gold on social media platforms, unless you personally know the seller. The savings you get from avoiding the dealer premium are not worth the risk of losing 100% of your capital. But what happens if you test your stack today and you discover that you are holding a fake bar? The first thing you must do is file a police report immediately to establish an official record of the fraud. You should also file a report with the Federal Trade Commission and the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Do not try to sell the fake bar to someone else to recoup your losses, because that makes you a felon. Selling counterfeit goods is a federal crime, and you do not want to go to prison over a bad investment. You should contact the seller immediately and demand a refund, but be prepared for them to ghost you. If you bought it on a platform like eBay or PayPal, you may have some buyer protection if you act quickly. But if you bought it with cash or crypto or a wire transfer, your chances of recovery are slim to none. This harsh reality is why prevention is infinitely better than cure in the world of precious metals. We also need to talk about the specific types of gold that are safer to buy for the average investor. Sovereign coins like the American Gold Eagle or the Canadian Maple Leaf are generally safer than generic bars. These coins have complex security features like radial lines and microengraving that are hard to replicate. The Gold Eagle is also made of 22 karat gold, which is an alloy of gold, silver, and copper. This alloy is much harder to fake with tungsten because the density math becomes extremely complicated for the counterfeiter. A generic gold bar is just a rectangle of metal, which is the easiest shape for a machinist to fake. A coin has a reeded edge and intricate artwork and a specific diameter and thickness that must be perfect. While fake coins do exist, they're often easier to spot with simple tools like a caliper and a digital scale. If you stick to the most popular sovereign coins, you are adding a layer of security through complexity. You should also avoid numismatic or rare coins, unless you are a professional expert with years of experience. The premiums on rare coins are subjective, and the counterfeits are often high-quality museum-grade replicas. Stick to bullion, which is valued by weight, not by rarity or historical significance or grading slab. The goal of gold investing is to preserve purchasing power, not to speculate on the collector value of a coin. We are entering a period of financial history where counterparty risk is the single biggest threat to your wealth. When you own a stock, you are trusting the company management and the SEC and the stock exchange. When you own a bond, you are trusting the government to pay you back with money that has value. When you own gold, you're trusting the laws of physics and the periodic table of elements. Physics cannot lie, and chemistry cannot be printed by a central bank or faked by a politician. But that trust is only valid if the metal in your hand is actually the element 79 on the periodic table. The fake gold epidemic is a test of your resolve and your commitment to being your own central bank. It forces you to take responsibility for your own financial sovereignty in a way that most people never do. It requires you to be diligent and skeptical and educated about the physical reality of money. Do not let the fear of fakes scare you away from owning the only asset that has survived every collapse. Let it motivate you to become a smarter and harder target for the scammers who are prowling the market. Buy your testing tools before you buy your next ounce of gold, because they are the most important investment you will make. Establish a relationship with a trusted local dealer who has a Sigma machine and is willing to show you the results. If a dealer refuses to test the metal in front of you, walk out of the door and never go back. Transparency is the antidote to fraud, and honest dealers will always be happy to prove their product is real. You have the power to protect yourself, but only if you take action before the crisis hits your safe. This is the end of our 3-part deep dive into the tungsten gold crisis, but the conversation is just beginning. I want you to take a pledge right now to audit your own holdings and verify your wealth this week. Do not wait until you need to sell to find out if your safety net is made of gold or lead. If you found value in this series, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with every gold bug you know. We need to spread the word about these testing methods to shut down the market for these criminals. If every buyer demands a Sigma test or an ultrasonic test, the scammers will have nowhere left to hide. Leave a comment below telling me which testing tool you are going to buy first, the Sigma or the ultrasonic. I read every single comment, and I want to help you build the ultimate verification strategy for your family. Thank you for watching, and for being part of the solution in the fight for honest money. Stay safe out there, verify everything, and trust nothing but the physics. I will see you in the next video update very soon.